This is Emma Moore, Director of Careers and Employability at the University of Liverpool, and you're listening to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast.
Hello, in this episode, myself, Alex Owen, academic developer, and Matt Davis, organisational developer, sat down with Emma Moore, Director of Careers and Employability. We discussed how she navigated through a challenging year of the pandemic and continued to develop her peer-led careers service. We hope you enjoy.
Hi Emma, it's great to have you finally with us on the podcast. Today we're talking about the work of the Careers and Employability team at the University of Liverpool. But before that, can we hear a little bit about your professional background and how you got to the role that you're in today?
Okay, classically, I didn't go to my careers service when I was at university, like most people who work in careers start their stories with. So when I finished my degree, which was in management and marketing, I did another classic thing and looked at what all my peers were doing, and my best friend was going to law school, so I thought, oh yeah, another couple of years studying. So I went to law school and did my 2 years. I got my qualifications and then hit the job market at quite a difficult time and struggled to find a law role. So all that sort of looking for a job and not being successful has really helped me understand and empathise with graduates going forward. But so I didn't get a job in law. I got a job at the law school, and part of that was organising open days and events. I did that for a year, and then a job came up at the university here and organising careers fairs, and I thought, oh yeah, that I've got the skills for that. It's closer to home, so applied for that and came and started to work at the university in a very long time ago, shall we say. So I've had a couple of roles within the university, mostly within careers, one a bit broader, a more general marketing role, but then went solidly back into careers when I got the role heading up the employer engagement team and working on business development and linking with graduate recruiters and other internship providers. And then from then I progressed to this role in 2017. So that's when I became interim director, and then soon after director of the team. I hit the team at a very exciting time. We were just at the start of a transformational change project then around employability, so everything was up for change and nothing was sort of off limits. So we did a full restructure of the team during my first year and completely changed the way that we deliver employability at the university too. So yeah, that's sort of how I got here, and that was my baptism by fire when I started the role a few years ago.
That's really interesting that you had those struggles early on in your career about trying to find work, and obviously that gives you a big insight into what students are facing these days. So you've worked mainly in the HE sector then?
Mainly at the university as well. Yeah. Which is, it's great when I reflect back on the 20 plus years, which is that I've spent here, but it's given me a great insight into the institution as well. But working in a variety of different roles too helps as well.
Yeah, would you advocate that then for other members of staff, for other colleagues, about just moving around gives you a greater insight?
Yeah, I think so. I think moving around and having different roles, you build more connections across the campus, and are able to understand different perspectives. I think, my network within the university as a director is very different to how it looked, when I was a marketing officer, for example. You're working with different teams and different people. So yeah, it's worked out quite well for me. Not quite sure how many people going forwards are going to have 20 plus year careers in one organisation, but we'll see.
Brilliant. And can you tell us a little bit about what you're specifically involved with now, Emma, in terms of your role as director?
Okay, so I obviously lead the careers team. There are currently around 60 staff in the team, 40 what we say full-time professional career staff, and then we have 20 student staff as well, which is a great balance, I think, in our team. So I'm responsible for leading the whole team, but I also lead on the employability agenda for the institution. So the usual committee work and papers and things like that around, and thought pieces around direction of employability and how that pans out across the institution. We've sort of, touched on the fact that we've changed focus as a careers team. We were very much a central service a few years ago. We were in a building at the heart of campus, and we sat there and waited for students to come and see us, make appointments, all of that. And now we've flipped that. Really, we try and be everywhere. We partner very, very closely with academic colleagues. Embedding employability in the curriculum is a massive part of what we try and do. We try and reach 100% of our students with employability through the curriculum. So that's really huge for us. But also, we have to connect with lots of different teams across the institution. So, my working network is very wide. We work with alumni, we work with recruitment, we work with, most departments, I would say, we have some sort of link with. We're working with HR on the Kickstart project at the moment. We need to be out there and be everywhere, and we're a very sort of externally facing department now.
Fantastic. And I'm guessing your role has changed and evolved significantly over the last year. It's fair to say that the COVID pandemic has had a significant impact for us all, both professionally and personally. So if you reflect back on 2020, can you share with us some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, where shall I start? Shall I start with the at-home ones?
Yeah, go for it.
It felt very, very challenging. I think, I'm quite a extrovert person. I like meeting people. I'm very social. I like, I spend a lot of time, talking to colleagues in the office and bouncing ideas off people. So for me, that has been the most challenging aspect, I think, being cut off from that and having to do all that through a screen. I have actually sneaked onto campus today, and I think I have done that quite a few times during the whole pandemic when it's been safe to do so, because I've just missed that human connection so much, and I just find things so much easier, fit doing things face to face. So that has been massive for me. Obviously, same as everyone, personal challenges with homeschooling or not homeschooling, as it's been a bit in my case, and having both my kids at home. Lottie's 14 and Jake's 11, and where they haven't needed that constant supervision, just making sure that they're happy and they're coping without their friends. All of that has been challenging too, and obviously the Wi-Fi issues always have been a challenge as well. So yeah, on a personal level, all of that has made this year pretty tough, but on a professional level, I think having gone through a big transformational change as a team just 2 years before, the team are quite agile and they're used to change, and so that has really helped us as a team. We haven't done things the same way for a really long time and suddenly had to wake up and do everything differently. We've been striving to do things differently for the last 2 years, so that sort of set us off really on a good note. When we first went into lockdown, a lot of our service is based on face-to-face, be it face-to-face delivery and lectures, or having groups of students come into the studio and meet with employers face-to-face. Our big careers fairs that happen on campus, where we have 3,000 students and 80 employers in the same space. Obviously, all of that disappeared overnight too. So trying to replicate or reimagine all these offers and different activities has been challenging this year, but we've managed to come up with solutions for all of them. which, some have worked and some have been possibly a little bit less successful. But, it's been challenging, I think, as well, for me, trying to keep connected to a large team. There are people in my team that, I don't meet on Zoom or on a screen, and there are people I haven't seen for months, and it's very hard to keep in touch with the people. Obviously my management team I see all the time, and we work very closely together, but beyond that, keeping up those connections, making sure everyone's okay, keeping on top of everyone's challenges with childcare, with illness, with other difficulties that have happened during this time. I think that has been really, really, really hard to do.
Yeah, so we're recording in early March now, and one of the things we're picking up as we talk to people through these podcasts is people are almost coming out the other end and trying to reassess where they're at in terms of their team well-being. Even are you sensing you're going to have to, maybe when we do return to campus or over the next few months, really start to address where people are at, because we've just been reacting so quickly to the pandemic over the last year? Do you think there's going to be some work around supporting people now to transition into maybe what the new way of life will be?
Massive piece of work, I think. I don't think anyone has come through this last year unchanged. Everyone's taken the opportunity to reassess priorities, look at, work-life balance, what's important to them. Everyone's thinking about how they want to work going forward and where they want to work. And the challenge for me and probably other managers across the institution is going to be how we can make it work for everyone, and for the organisation as well. I love as much as anyone else the sort of utopian vision of work being a place where you can rock up to with your laptop and have a coffee with people and innovate, and then you can spend other days at home where you can go for big long walks at lunchtime on the beach and pick your kids up from school and all of that. That's something that we all should strive for, and we should keep hold of those bits that we all think are important. But also, I'm really realistic about the challenge of managing everybody's different ideas around what work's going to be and how we still keep the things that are really, really important about the office and how we work together, like, how new team members learn, how we foster a culture, how we innovate. I think a lot of the innovation that I've seen within my team has come from people with shared interests, having chance conversations. How do we do that when everything's so formal and you have to book a meeting? So, yeah, I think, lots of challenges around well-being, coming back to work and what on earth that is ever going to look like for everyone.
Yeah, I think COVID's definitely changed. It's changed how we work, where we work, and it's going to keep on those changes. They're with us forever, aren't they? I think it's also changed and reshaped the job market for the future. And it's clear. Well, it was clear before, but I think it's even more clear now that the digital skills that our students leave us are more important than ever before. So, where do you see those future roles for our graduates at the moment? Bearing in mind we're going into a post-pandemic world.
Yeah, get my crystal ball out at this point. I think lots of change ahead and lots of challenge for our graduates. I mentioned before about my 20-year career with the university. I don't think that's what it's going to be like for our graduates in the workplace. I think they are going to have varied careers. They are going to have work in lots of different roles, lots of different organisations. And, an exciting thing is that they've got more scope than ever before to do that, with remote working. And we all know, I've talked about some of the challenges around it, but there are some really good parts to it as well. You can be part of a team in the States, but live in Liverpool. That's really exciting. And I think, for this generation of graduates coming out now, they're going to feel that more than ever before. So that's going to be exciting. And the digital skills that they're developing during this sort of period of hybrid learning and remote teaching, that those skills are going to stay with them and they're going to be valuable. We talk a lot about having your camera on. I sort of butt heads a lot with Simon Thompson on this, because obviously from a educational perspective, we want to be very supportive of our students, and it doesn't matter in some forms of remote teaching if they have their cameras on or off. But obviously in the workplace, once you're having meetings with people, you're sitting there with your camera off is not really appropriate. So I think a lot of the skills that they've learned during this time are going to be appropriate, but also, we really need to support them with that transition to understand like what works in a university environment and what works in the world of work. I think the types of jobs obviously are going to change. The way I do my job has changed over the last year, and I think everyone can say that. But also the types of roles we need, the people that I even see it in my team. We have lots of different functions in the team, and when we were on campus, we had a really big events team, and it was all about the face-to-face and how we create that big noise on campus. That team now are all working on different areas, and comms and social media has become more important, and that's how we're bringing about visibility. And I think we'll see that in the roles that graduates do as well. The jobs that we're seeing advertised are already starting to look a little bit different. Maybe the job titles are still the same, but the roles and responsibilities and the skills that people are looking for are all put together in a slightly different way. And I think that's just gonna carry on as things progress and as we go back to work. The roles are going to start to look very different.
It's interesting you mentioned the skills there. I had a conversation with Ewan Williams in your team about leveraging LinkedIn Learning for students. And there's an interesting piece of work he was explaining about matching the top skills that are required for the top employers that our graduates go to some of the LinkedIn Learning skills. So we can, even if they're not doing those types of skills in their course, they can still leave the university with those skills that employers are looking for. I think that's really, really interesting and a really good way to go.
Yeah, I think, the data that we've got available to us now through various different sources, like we have the EMSI database here, but we also link with the Combined Authority and they have Horsefly. So we're really able to interrogate live job ads, really pull out those roles, responsibilities, duties, skills that employers are looking for. And it's given us a really sort of immediate way of changing how we work and what we deliver. So, we can do these data searches and we can find out exactly what skills recruiters of chemists are looking for, and then we can make sure that our delivery into curriculum is really capturing those skills and we're focusing in the right areas and the things that are going to be on demand. So yeah, that sort of data mining, it's given us really valuable insight into the jobs market that we haven't probably had before.
Brilliant. I've also worked with you and some of your other colleagues, and I think it's really interesting the way we're looking to embed the employability agenda within the University of Liverpool curriculum framework, and people are doing this in such creative ways. Can you tell us about some of the examples of how your team are collaborating with academics to ensure students are prepared for the world of work?
Yeah, definitely. I think a few years ago, when careers, it was very much a careers advisor would be invited into a lecture to talk about how to put a CV together or maybe give a bit of an overview about what was happening in a particular sector. And they were given maybe a 10-minute slot at the end. And that was how we worked with academic colleagues. This has changed sort of beyond recognition now. We have there's a full side of my team. There's 18 members of staff who are fully focused on supporting our curriculum work. So, it's a massive part of what we do. And there's some really, really exciting stuff happening there. The university curriculum hallmarks around active learning and authentic assessment and confidence have given us a real in and a real place where we can add value to the curriculum. So, there's sort of two ways we do this. We focus on recruitability tools in authentic assessment. So even before the pandemic and we moved to this remote way of working, online interviews were becoming more and more popular, just for issues of cost, sustainability, all of that. You know, if you can interview someone in this virtual way, then that is going to save a lot of time and be more cost effective. But obviously now, you know, it's really taken off, and we have access to a platform called Shortlist Me, where students can practice this sort of online interviewing. But we've also found it's a great assessment tool too. So maybe whereas before a student might have written an essay on a particular topic as an assessment, we've been able to collaborate with our colleagues and give them access to this system. So the assessment is actually them setting some questions for the students. I mean, it doesn't even have to be career related, it can be related to the module, but the students are then just practicing using this tool. So it's a really authentic assessment. Another thing that's really taken off for us this year, at the start of this pandemic, as a full team, every member of the team was trained in delivering online assessment centres, and we can build and create that sort of experience. So we've managed to embed that in quite a few modules as well as an assessment piece. So we'll run a full assessment centre like a student would go through if they were applying for a job. Takes place on Zoom. We use lots of different platforms and technologies that we have access to in careers and build them in and give the students a really rounded experience. Another thing that's been really, really popular and has worked brilliantly is embedded employer projects. So whereas a great example of this is in maths, there was a module where which is around data, and the students would work on some imaginary data set created by the academic. What we've been able to do by working in partnership is partner them up with Very, big local employer, and get some of their real live data for the students to work on. And we framed the project in the module as a teamwork project where they work on the live data, but it's introduced by the employer. So they get that employer contact as well in the curriculum, and also that understanding of, you know, how their skills apply in a real world situation. So yeah, they're just some of the things that we've been doing, but it's probably one of the most exciting things that we do.
Yeah, brilliant. I've come across quite a few of these projects. You and I, Emma, sit on the Learning and Teaching Fellowship Awards panel, and quite a lot of these projects come up there, as well as the Learning and Teaching Student Experience Awards. And one of the things that really strikes me is it obviously works for the academics because, you know, it works directly in terms of what they need to be doing with the curriculum. But what I love is hearing the student feedback as well, that students really get what you're trying to do, because instead of kind of writing a dry essay, which they know they need to do, but actually having these projects really does prepare them for the workforce. And therefore the students love getting engaged with these kind of assessments.
They're so transformational. You know, you can see that the journey that the student goes on. That project with Very, the winning team who did the best assessment, got to go into the Very offices and spend the day there. And, you know, they got to meet the employers, they met the recruiting team. You know, one of them has gone on to be hired by the organisation. So, you know, it's just transformational for the students, and, you know, they really get it, and it's engaging as well. It's something different too.
You've just mentioned the assessment centres, and that's really interesting because, well, I'd like to know more about that, and we can always take that off the podcast. I think that's a discussion for another time. But yeah, those assessment centres are interesting because we're aware that your team recruits and then trains a group of highly skilled student career coaches who are based in the Career Studio and are now obviously your virtual career studio people. So this seems like a highly effective peer support model that you've adopted, and I know it goes down really well with students. So can you tell us a little bit more about the model and why you chose to adopt that approach at that time?
Okay, one of the challenges of our old model of being a careers service sat at the centre of campus and waiting for people to come in was that we were only seeing around 12% of students. So only 12% of our students were getting employability support, and arguably they were the 12% that possibly didn't need the support. So we needed to change, and we needed to extend our reach. You know, we needed to get out there, and I knew what we needed to do was get embedded in the curriculum. But actually, you know, building these relationships with academic colleagues, doing the delivery, it's very time consuming. And if my team were tied up at the centre of campus waiting for appointments and for students to turn up, that wasn't going to be doable at all. So I needed a way to free them up. So I did lots of research, did lots of reading, looked at what other universities were doing in the UK, and everybody basically had the same model. So I wasn't really getting anywhere. And then I came across a university in the States, it's University of Nevada, where they ran this peer-to-peer model. They were very different to us, had a very different setup. The careers team was one person, which was why they adopted this model there. But, you know, we had the same challenges around scale. So there were so many things that I liked about the model. You know, I remember I read the article in my kitchen one Saturday, and Paul Redman was at an open day that day, and I was so excited that I'd found something, and I phoned him up because I knew that he was working, and I was like, oh my God, Paul, I found it. I found what we can do. It's you know, it's going to really change. Do you think we could do it? And he was like, gosh, yeah, you know, it sounds brilliant. And we spent a lot of time talking through, planning it, thinking through how it would work and what the benefits would be. You know, there's obvious benefits around peer-to-peer, around emotional connections and empathy. You know, the career coaches, which is what we call the student staff, they understand exactly where the student clients are coming from. You know, they get that. There were big questions at the beginning about whether we would be able to train them enough so that they weren't just giving their informed opinions or their best guesses about what students could do. But part of our model is that the student coaches aren't experts in everything. You know, you can't be, and information is out there. So what we needed to do is sort of foster this ethos of co-exploration. So what happens when a student comes into the studio and meets a coach is they talk through the problem, and then together they work together to find the answer. So what we train the coaches in is this whole co-exploration process, but also how to find information, where the information is, how to draw a student through the process. We have nudge theory at the heart of what we do. So it's very much about small steps, giving the student something small to do and making them take the next action in their career. But yeah, the studio has been probably the best thing that we've done. You know, it's super exciting. It's totally different to anything that's happening anywhere else in the UK. We've had visits when we could have visits from, I think it was over 60 different universities come to have a look at what we do. Having students as part of the team as well, we make them very much partners in everything we do. So anybody designing a new session or working with an academic colleague on something in a module, we'll run it past a career coach. You know, we have them working with us in every way. If I'm going out and meeting a head of department, I'll take a coach with me, and that they'll add their perspective to the conversation. It's just revolutionised the way that we do things. And, you know, before we were all about focus groups and surveys and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Now we have the student voice as part of the team. So we've always got them bringing us back to the fact that we need to design what we're doing for them, and it needs to resonate. So the benefits are countless of the studio and having those coaches as part of the team. You know, they're used as ambassadors in open days. They're used by so many teams across the university because they're students, but they're also staff. So they also, you know, get the university offer as well. So they're like a bit of an informed student voice as well, which has been, you know, so great for us.
Brilliant. I've met some of your student coaches. I think they were presenting at a learning and teaching conference. And I have to say it was one of the best sessions. They were so articulate and so confident in what they were talking about. And they were able to bring, as you're saying, a perspective that we will never have as academics. So the session was brilliant. And it's obviously being involved is having a real impact on those coaches as well in terms of their future.
Oh, they're brilliant. I mean, we've just recruited last week. We did our online assessment centres for 80. We brought 80 through assessment centre. We had 380 applications. 180 of them did a video interview, and then 80 came to assessment centre. So we've got our new batch of 20 coaches, but obviously we've got our coach alumni now, and the jobs that they're doing, really exciting for me. Lots of them have gone into the talent sort of sector. So 2 of them are our contacts now, in our graduate recruitment contacts in 2 of our employers that we work closely with. We have one is working in a partner organisation, Upreach, that we partner with. So it's just exciting to see the impact that we have on their lives as well. They're such a bonded group, and they also feel such a part of the university. At the end of each cohort, when they leave, we have a celebration event, and then we invite back the old coach cohort. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that this year, but we're dying to get back face to face, just so that we can have them all together and hear how they're all getting on. And having them, because they're members of staff, they stay in touch as well with the university, which is really, really nice.
I've got an example of one of the cases where we've used your career coaches. So in the welcome event that I used to run face to face, at the end of the welcome event, we'd have a couple of them, or I think actually no, one of them would come along and then do the campus tour for us. And the feedback we got from new starters on that was great, because we've actually got, there's some interaction there between students. So it's not just about the campus tour. They're asking lots of questions of each other, as they're walking around campus. So yeah, feedback on that part of the induction was great. And, I look forward to doing that again when we have some more face-to-face stuff.
I think we see that. The conversations, obviously, the students are trained. They get 2 weeks training at the start when they start with us, but they're trained constantly. And part of that is that we observe them every 2 weeks. They get observed, and then they get feedback on, how they've performed in the observation, which we think's really, really important from a quality point of view, but also from a development point of view for the coaches. But when you're listening to the conversations, they're so different to a conversation that I would have with a student. And the students will ask them, yes, it'll be focused on careers, but they'll be asking them all sorts of different questions. And it's just so much more natural and so much more human, the connection that they can make. It's not like talking to a grown-up about what you want to be. It's totally different to that.
Well, Emma, we're obviously coming off the back of an extremely challenging year, and I'm not sure this year will be any easier. However, from what you're describing, it seems like your service has navigated the challenges incredibly effectively. So what's next for your service in terms of kind of next steps and future plans?
We've got a lot going on. I think one of the big challenges for us is that obviously there's lots of concern about the jobs market for young people, and graduates fit into that. And so, there's lots of different initiatives, and there's lots of funding pots. So we've been really successful in bidding for funding and new projects. So we've won £5.6 million worth of funding from various different sources to start a lot of new projects this year. It's really exciting, but also really challenging. We restructured the team 2 years ago. We're just in the middle of a mini reorganisation because of all these projects. We've got a lot of recruitment going on. We're recruiting currently for 7 new members of the team in various different areas to support these new projects. So we've got an ESF bid that started actually on Monday, which is all about developing a graduate scheme for the city. So it's working with SMEs and designing an umbrella graduate programme where graduates will be recruited, and then they'll be developed as a cohort And there's various different elements. They'll go and work as ambassadors in schools for the career sector they're in. It's a really exciting project. So that's kicking off. We're running the university's version of the government's Kickstart initiative, where we'll be recruiting for 50 graduate internships on campus within the university. We've got another ERDF funded project around enterprise, which is about creating startups in the city, but startups with potential for growth. So instead of startups with one founder, startups with founder boards that will bring together from various different institutions. John Moores are the lead partner in this, but the idea is that you might have a John Moores student who's interested in tech, one of our medics, one of our marketing students, and they'll get together around one idea. So the business will start with 3, and as it starts bigger, it will grow quicker. So that's a really exciting project for us. We've got lots on around enterprise and startup. We've got additional funding this year from Hive to run loads of new enterprise activity. So that's a really exciting new sort of area for us. And we're also really, really focused on putting together a really cohesive offer for our class of 2021 students, who've had such a struggle over the last 2 years. I feel passionately that it's so important that we send them off in the right way with the right sets of skills and access to the right kind of opportunities. So that's been a real focus for what we've been working on, and that's going to really take a lot of our time over the next few months.
Thanks, Emma. So the name of this podcast is obviously the Developing Practice podcast, and we like to finish each podcast with 3 or 4 take-home tips that the listeners could reflect on in terms of their own personal practice. So reflecting on your experiences so far, what 3 or 4 tips could you give for the listeners?
I think the first one really reflecting on the time when we changed what we did and driving change in the institution. I think that was quite a challenging time for me, and I think what I really learned from that was how important it is to be determined and to keep your vision at the front of your mind at all times, and just keep pushing and keep going. There were times when changing the whole way we deliver careers didn't sit easily with lots of different audiences, but I think if you just keep going and keep that vision and keep articulating it, then people will come round. And as an organisation, we can be agile and we can change, and we can embrace change. People will eventually embrace change. So I think number one for me, keep determined and hold on to your vision. Second, keep in touch with your networks and keep those relationships going. I spent a lot of time during this time when we've been at home keeping up with my networks. I meet other heads of careers probably more often than I ever have before. Chris Finn, who's had a careers at John Moores, I think I talk to him more than quite a lot of members of my team at the moment. And I think this new way of working has meant that we're not limited by geography anymore. So keep creating your networks and reaching out to people and keep having those conversations. Be curious is one that I always say. I talk a lot about skills that students need and have, and I always say curiosity is my favourite one. Keep reading, keep finding out, listen to podcasts. You can access more information now than we've ever been able to before. I try and go to one webinar every week coming from a different group of people with a different perspective. And I think, being open to different perspectives and looking in different places for insight and ideas, it is really important. And then just one final one. Make time to talk with people who are passionate about the same things as you without an agenda. I think the best conversations and the best ideas come from those free form conversations. Any ideas that I've ever had have never come from a formal meeting with a formal agenda. those ad hoc conversations where you're just sharing ideas and sharing things that you're passionate about have always been the key for me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. Thanks for your time today. You've been great.
Well, I really enjoyed that chat with Emma. It was really good to catch up with her and to hear how her year's gone. I really like what she was saying about how professionally she's seen her team be really agile and change over the course of the year. But she reflected that that's something that they've been striving to do for a number of years now. So even though the year's been really challenging, they have been able to adapt because they're so used to change and to moving very quickly in response to what's going on.
Yeah, and she talked about embedding of employability directly into the curriculum in various ways and how the students have fed back about how helpful that's been. And I really liked how she did a lot of research into various models of careers services, across the HE spectrum, and found that peer student-led model really did help to sort of drive home the employability elements of what going to a university is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. The model that they've got there is obviously very unique for the sector and is being highly effective. Well, there's lots for us to think about there. If you'd like to take your thinking further, we've added some resources to the website on a specific podcast reading list, which you can access at liverpool.ac.uk/the-academy/podcast. Also, we love to hear back from you in terms of what you thought about the episode. So please do tweet us at LiveUniAcademy, and you can also find us at eLearnerMatt or at Alexandra_Owen on Twitter.
And we're really grateful for those who have taken the time to either rate or review our show in your podcast provider's app. So if you're an Apple user, please do take the time to review our show, as it really will help others find us. Bye for now.